Hey, Jack. So, yeah, I think we need to make two very important distinctions here. Okay, so distinction number one, you have to distinguish between what is true and what can be proven, right? There's some true things that are true that we will never be able to prove are true, right? This is the human condition, right? We are finite human creatures, and there's some things we just can't do. And we have to admit that there are going to be some things that are true that we just can't prove are true, right? So I think you make the mistake a little bit there of confusing these two things. When you say things like, atheists are presupposing from the get-go that supernatural events never happen. Okay, this is a common misconception, but it is a misconception. Okay, I'm not pre I'm not presupposing that supernatural things never happen. Okay, there's a difference between saying supernatural things never happen and saying supernatural things can't be proven. Okay, that's a very important distinction. So, my claim isn't that they never happen. My claim is you can't prove whether they happen or not. Actually, it's not my claim. This is completely, blatantly ripped off from David Hume. But that's the claim. Okay, so it's not like we're saying from the get go that supernatural things never happen. So just to illustrate how this works, okay, let's put the supernatural hypothesis in the mix here with another hypothesis, right? My favorite evil twin theory, right? So we have Jesus Christ rose from the dead theory, and we have the evil twin theory. Now here's the problem, Jack. You know, initially, um, you know, at the beginning of before you muster any evidence for this, right? You know, the evil twin theory has to be considered more probable than the resurrection theory by the sheer fact that the evil twin theory doesn't violate any laws of nature, right? If you were a Muslim and looking at Christianity, or if you were an atheist looking at Christianity, you would have to assign a higher probability to the evil twin theory. Now, um, that's just how it is. Now, the question then becomes, can we make the resurrection hypothesis more probable than the evil twin hypothesis by mustering more and more evidence for it? And but the problem, Jack, when you try to do this, you find you can't do it because whatever evidence you bring which supports the resurrection hypothesis will also support the evil twin hypothesis. That's just how it is, right? For example, the empty tomb, right? So we don't have an empty tomb. We don't know which place. I mean, you can't go to the Holy Land and point to say this is the empty tomb. And there's no body here, right? We just have books that describe it. But for the sake of argument, let's presume that there was an empty tomb that was there. Okay, so the empty tomb would support both of these hypotheses. It's the disciples could have gone and cleared out the tomb before anybody came. This is completely, that's the whole problem. So it's not like you can't. The claim isn't that it's not true, Jack. The claim is that you can't prove that it's true using naturalistic means. It's kind of like trying to buy love with money. Okay, you don't get love with by spending a lot of money. That's not how it works. And similarly, you can't reach a supernatural conclusion with naturalistic evidence. It's just not going to work. The two things just don't go together, right? So that's the first distinction we need to keep in mind. And the second distinction we need to keep in mind is whether something is very probable to be true and whether something is reasonable to believe that is true. Okay, those two things are not the same thing either. Okay, so for example, I don't think that your faith in Christ is unreasonable. I think it's very improbable that Christ rose from the dead, but I don't think you're being unreasonable if you believe that Christ rose from the dead. I don't think you're being irrational by being a Christian at all. So there's two other things that we have to distinguish here, right? So your example from the Gospel of John there about the man who was born blind is a very interesting example. Actually, thanks a lot for bringing that up. Because it perfectly illustrates this problem. I mean, you're right. I am the neighbor who said this isn't the same guy. It's the evil twin hypothesis all over again, right? They obviously trotted out somebody who kind of bears a resemblance to this person, right? It's exactly the position I'm in. I am that neighbor, okay? And I think it's very interesting that the gospel writers chose to put this story in there. I think they put it in there for a reason, and I think they were. That's one of their ways of saying, okay, these miracles that happens, or these reports of miracles, are not going to convince everybody. This is not the way that this conviction is going to happen, right? So it's like I think the parable of the rich man and Dives is quite the same. When Jesus said that even if somebody comes back from the dead, they're not going to believe that it happened. So I'm not going to send Lazarus back to warn everybody about this, right? So that's I think the Gospels themselves are very clear on this that these miracles happen. Yes, they are for strengthening your faith, but they are for strengthening your faith. They're not for strengthening your sight, right? And yeah, they deliberately put those in there. So, but at any rate, Jack, that's arguing it from kind of like from my turf, from the atheistic viewpoint. Okay, let's argue the same point from your perspective. Okay, you mentioned in one of your previous videos there, question answer videos there, that you kind of had a Calvinistic rather than an Arminian viewpoint on this, right? And I think this this whole notion that people aren't going to be convinced by marshaling a lot of evidence for this fits in very well with the Calvinistic outlook, right? Um, you and me. I mean, you are Jacob and I'm Esau, right? I mean, it's like those people who God has particularly blessed and whose minds have been particularly enlightened by God, so that these truths are evident to them. Those ones are the ones who are going to believe this, right? And those who haven't been particularly enlightened by God, those whose minds are so twisted around by sin or by the fall of man that these truths aren't going. I mean, there's no amount of evidence that you're going to put to these people. That's not how the conviction happens, right? The conviction happens by a special gift of the grace of God, which enlightens the people, right? Um, I think that's just a theological way of putting the same point, basically. It's saying the same thing. It's like saying the same thing in German and English, or saying the same thing in Humean language, or saying the same thing in Calvinistic language. It's that you are the way that people are convinced, or the way that people come to this belief in God, has nothing to do with evidence or any effort on their part or on your part. It's a direct enlightenment from God that happens. God chooses a specific portion of humanity who is going to receive this and who's going to get it, and the rest of us are just left out in the cold, right? So, at any rate, thanks a lot for your video, man.